Welcome to the Transforming Industries podcast, or better said, welcome back, since I have taken a break and now continue with the podcast. As before the break, the podcast will focus on industrial tech, the transformation of the technology and vendor landscape, and especially the role M&A plays in this transformational and dynamic environment. And what would be a better way to restart the podcast than an industrial tech quarterly episode together with my co-host in this format, Sebastián Trolli from Frost Sullivan. And even though 2026 has already progressed a bit, we want to take a recap on 2025 on some key trends we do consider not as temporary hypes, but as here to stay, with significant impact on the technology landscape, the technology stack, and the vendor landscape as well. In this first part of our review, we will look at some trends that we feel are a little bit under the radar, but will have a major impact on the automation stack and therefore the industrial tech vendor landscape overall. We call them hidden champions of 2025.
Probably the big implication, the traditional automation vendors, is that, with this SDA, software-defined automation initiatives, hardware is becoming a commodity, right? So it's a challenge for them in order to, review, redesign their business models, right? Because industrial automation vendors, traditionally, they heavily relied on hardware sales and, of course, services that are attached to the maintenance of those hardware sales, right? So nowadays, everything is shifting towards software, not just on the upper layers or the upper layers of the automation pyramid, but also in the lower layers. So it's a huge implication for them.
Transforming industries.
On a personal note, before we start our discussion, if you enjoy this episode and like the content of the podcast, I would be really delighted if you leave a 5-star rating on your favorite platform. Also, if you explore strategic opportunities in the industrial tech space, be it on the sell side or buy side, feel free to reach out. Contact details will be linked into the footnotes. But for now, let's jump into the discussion with Sebastián. Hi, Sebastián. How are you doing? Great to have you back here in the podcast.
Hi, Tim. How are you doing? Thank you for having me, and it's a huge pleasure, right, to be here again.
Great. Thanks a lot. Sebastián, I just looked, so it's already almost a year back that since we talked the last time in the podcast. And it was also the last episode before the break that I took on the podcast. So it's really great to close the circle, having you as last in the podcast, and now restarting the podcast again with you and addressing our topics that we started to discuss about. I think for those who have joined today for the first time, just a quick introduction of Sebastián. Sebastián is the head of industrial automation and software from Frost Sullivan. And yeah, Sebastián, you were the first one I had here in the podcast when we started the whole podcast with a discussion about the $1 trillion opportunity of industrial tech. And I think we immediately found out that it's great to discuss, right? So we said, why not making a kind of a regular format out of that, which we then called the Industrial Tech Quarterly, where we typically talk about technology trends impacting the vendor landscape, impacting the way forward for industrial automation, smart factories, and so on. And I think in that context, we very often discuss about the value migration from hardware to software, impact of IT-OT convergence, and so on. And I think in the restart, as we are still not too far into 2006, we thought it would be good to have, let's say, kind of a looking back on 2025, what were the major trends? Short outlook saying, how do they transfer into 2026? So, and as we both learned also that the past, we typically tend to discuss and talk quite long. We, from the beginning, decided to do this review in 3 parts. So, small spoiler. So there will be a couple of episodes on this quarterly series here. But for today, we said we might start with not the obvious topic, right? So I think everybody would expect, if you look at trends in 2025, having industrial AI, and we promise we will come to that point. But for this first part, we thought it's worth looking at some, and we call them hidden champions, some drivers or some trends, some technologies that I think for experts, they are pretty aware of that, but let's say for a broader public, for management levels of companies, maybe not that present, like as we say, industrial AI, right? So today we want to, let's say, lay the ground for this review, having those topics that we think are not just hypes, but let's say really fundamental trends that will transform the technology stack, the landscape, and also lay the foundation when we come later to industrial AI, right? So now enough from my side. So Sebastian, maybe you want to start with some of the key trends that we selected.
Yes, absolutely. And again, thank you so much, Tim, for having me. It's a huge pleasure. And again, after 1 year, there are a lot of things to talk about, particularly throughout 2025. A lot of things happened in the market, and also 2026 so far, right? So, and as you rightly pointed out, right? Even though industrial AI is everywhere today, at every trade show, every user conference, we cannot forget, I would say, three. There are more, but three technology trends, I would say, or technology markets, right? From an analyst standpoint, I typically talked about markets, right? So, which are extremely important at some point. Some of them are foundational for industrial AI and implement industrial AI at scale, right? So, I would like to start with industrial data management as the first topic, this first hidden champion. And regarding that, let me tell you that 2 weeks ago, I had the chance, the opportunity to attend a user conference in Dallas, Texas, the US. Its name is Prove It conference. It's a conference that is hosted by probably one of the top industry influencers worldwide, which is Walker Reynolds. He's a system integrator, but also he's a well-respected voice in the field. And this event, this conference, brought almost 1,000 manufacturers. It's end user oriented, right? The thing that makes this conference unique is that all the vendors that were there, 51 in total, need to prove it. I mean, they go to the stage and they need to prove that their system works, right? So okay. That's the I would say the uniqueness or the unique characteristic of this conference, right? And at that conference, of course, the main topic of conversation and the main topic for the conference was the UNS, right? The Unified Namespace and Industrial Data Management as the foundational layer in order to deploy on top of it industrial AI related applications, right? So. And regarding this topic, Tim, if I may, if you allow me, I would like to make a differentiation, right? Because when we talk about industrial data management, right, sometimes there are some terminology that is used as synonym, right? For instance, industrial data management, industrial data ops, unified namespace, right? So first of all, if I may, I would like to quickly clarify and differentiate those three terminologies, if I may.
Sure.
From a little bit from a technical standpoint, but not diving deeper in too much, right? So when we talk about industrial data management, what we are covering basically is the entire data lifecycle in manufacturing, right? From connecting to data sources and collecting raw signals to contextualizing that data and making it consumable by applications, analytics, and of course, AI, right? That's industrial data management. Now, what is industrial data ops, right? It's a kind of a subset of industrial data management, right? And we can define industrial data ops as the operational discipline of managing industrial data pipelines, right? Ingestion, quality, transformation, governance, and also delivery, right? At scale, right? Data ops comes from the IT world, right? And it borrows from the IT DevOps practices like, version control, continuous integrations, continuous development pipelines, etc. and applies those DevOps techniques or frameworks to the industrial data layer. So it's a kind of subset of industrial data, the broader industrial data management concept. And when we talk about unified namespace, UNS, which is in fact a concept that was originated by the host of the Brewery Conference, Walker Reynolds, 10 years ago, more or less. When we talk about UNS, it's a kind of architecture, right? It's not a framework, it's not a methodology, it's not a sequence of steps in order to, manage data. We can define UNS like a kind of a single, centralized, real-time, I would say, data hub that replaces the traditional ISA 95 or automation pyramid, right? This architecture with a flat event-driven structure, right? So basically the idea is that in a UNS, in a unified namespace, every single application, whether it is PLCs, ERP systems, SCADA system, MES system, etc., publishes and subscribes data to a shared topic tree. So every single signal, every single tag name it has their own names and their own characteristics across the whole system infrastructure, right? So basically those are the three differentiators between industrial data management, industrial data ops, and UNS, right? So I wanted to start with that clarification.
And I think if we and maybe this is something that is a little bit below maybe from many players in the market below the line. One thing is it's obvious and understandable that you say if you talk, for example, about industrial AI, you need this structured data, contextualized data. If you think about these hundreds, thousands of data sources, if we want to come to let's say a proper database, this is exactly what you need to discuss. But it has also huge implications, as you already mentioned, right, for the automation pyramid, because actually it means you're losing this kind of hierarchy, and this also opens, let's say, the space for vendors in the market addressing different layers of the stack without, for example, it opens the space for, let's say, hyperscalers, software players on the automation level without even having own hardware knowledge, right? Because if you think about those topics and getting the data directly out of that stack, so it's really creating a new landscape, I would say.
Absolutely, Tim.
Or opportunities in the landscape.
Yeah, and that's a really good observation, and that is what is happening, right? Not just from our research. I'm able to see that not just from our research, but also to attend these trade shows, like for instance, Brewery, right? So it's true, the automation pyramid, it's flattening, particularly. Here we need to establish a clear differentiation between large enterprises, right, as end users of this technology, and small and medium businesses, right? I would say that a short comment on this, that small medium businesses or small medium enterprises, yet they need to, not they need to, but they heavily rely on the automation pyramid, right? From a digital maturity standpoint, they are kind of the laggards, so there's a lot of tasks to do in terms of infrastructure and modernization, right? In order to talk about this, flat hierarchy and UNS and so on. But now going back to the large enterprises, that is what is happening, right? So you will see from a company universe or company ecosystem standpoint that I would say more and more industrial software players, platform providers, not just point solutions providers, but platform providers offer, a platform which is basically the data foundation, the data management foundation, and then on top of that, they create these different use cases, like it could be, for instance, MES, connected frontline worker applications, visualization dashboards, right? So it's, for us, the analysts, who always try to, perfectly segment and categorize every single player and every single technology in a particular segment in the market, it's a hard work right today, because it's pretty difficult, because there's a lot of confusion also out there, right? So, but yeah, in a nutshell, from an architectural standpoint, absolutely. There are of course the incumbents, the big ones, the traditional industrial automation vendors, but kind of from my perspective, the industrial software players are the ones who are kind of disrupting and leading the charge in terms of innovation. And these incumbents, the big or large industrial automation players, are kind of following them right in that direction.
Okay.
But absolutely, it has massive implications. For the tech stack, particularly at this point for large enterprises.
Okay. And if you say there's, at the moment, you can observe that many or most of the large players have their, let's say, own solution in that areas. What, from your perspective, is behind? Is it the market itself for the data management, which would be obvious, like saying what you just discussed, that you need this kind of layer in the industrial stack in terms of data contextualization and so on? Or is it also part of, let's say, bringing structure in your own, let's say, buy and build strategy? Because what you can see in the market is basically that many of the software vendors, the automation players, the large ones like Siemens, Rockwell, acquiring a lot of companies, right? So the portfolios and innovations are pretty much built around acquisitions. And is that also, let's say, kind of a part of the overall architectural strategy, put it that way, that you have a common ground layer in order to organize your acquisitions and to better connect those companies you're acquiring? Or what is your perspective on that?
No, yeah, absolutely, and that's a huge driver, right? That's a huge growth driver for this market, and I would say there are a couple of factors here, right? From a technological or technology standpoint, if you compare, right, the growth curves, right, for industrial AI and for industrial data management, you will see that 2023, 2024, I would say, you will see those curves, steeping, right? The growth rates change exponentially. So with this, or what I want to say is that industrial AI is the big driver, right? Because again, here applies the famous principle: garbage in, garbage out. So you cannot have a trustworthy industrial AI application if you do not have a really solid data management foundation, right? So that's why I would say for industrial AI, it's kind of symbiotic relationship. For industrial AI, industrial data management is one of their huge drivers, and vice versa, right? But on the other hand, then you have the technology strategy for the different companies, right? As you rightly pointed out, the incumbents, right, in industrial automation and industrial software landscape, companies like Siemens, for instance, companies like on separate domains, I would say companies like PTC, right, or the Dassault System in the design and engineering phase of the manufacturing value chain, are doubling down their efforts on the AI strategy. And there are two things here. Either they are acquiring smaller software vendors, or they are carving out their businesses, right? We will talk about that later for sure in a separate part. But yeah, a couple of growth drivers, coexist here, right? Industrial AI for sure, and then the different strategies that companies are adopting, right? They know that it's the build, partner, or buy. If you cannot build it, or if you can't partner with some other company for whatever the reason, then buy it, right? Yeah. And this is a reality that is being seen, particularly in the data management and industrial AI spaces, right? And these are some of the growth drivers, right? I was telling you, according to our research, the data management, the overall, not just the data ops, but the overall industrial data management market is now valued at between 9 to 12 billion, depending on how we are defining the scope. Mm-hmm. But it is projected to grow almost at a 20% compound annual growth rate till 2032, right? So massive opportunity for for growth opportunities for the market, particularly for the vendors and also investing firms.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I think, as I said, like in the beginning, maybe a topic that is not so widely seen or so publicly discussed, right? But I think very fundamental for the whole technology stack, and also, as we see, also quite a huge market size, right? If we come to the second trend that we identified or wanted to take a look at, maybe, as you say in the beginning, it's more a broader trend than a pure technology, right? It's software-defined automation. But I think, again, if we start discussing with a huge impact on the landscape. So this is also why trends that we are looking at, right? Saying how do they affect not only the end markets, but also the vendors in that space. And if we go into it, I think this topic also has a huge impact on especially on the automation players. But maybe in the beginning, you can also give kind of a brief idea what is behind software-defined automation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tim. And this is a really important topic, particularly in the lower layers. If we go back to the automation pyramid or the ISA 95 model, this topic highly impacts the lower layers, right? Particularly the control layer, right? So software-defined automation is not a new concept. It's been there for a while now. I would say since the inception of Industry 4.0, right? Back in 2011, 2012, 2013. But it is true that since 2021, 2022, this market also experienced, high growth rates. Okay, so when we talk about software-defined, we need to be very careful here, right? In order to clearly explain what is it, right? When we talk about software-defined automation, we are not talking about, the inception of Windows technologies, or open communication protocols. That was the revolution in the 1990s, right? Remember that until 1990, more or less the 80s, the 90s, the whole tech stack, the whole automation pyramid was vendor lock-in, right? What happened in 1990 with the inception of Windows and the open communication protocols such as OPC was avoiding the vendor lock-in, but to the upper layers of the automation pyramid, right? From the systems that take data from, the control systems upwards, right? When we talk about software-defined automation now in the 2010s or the 2020s, I would say, means that we are kind of central. It's if I can summarize it in one single statement, would be the decoupling of software from hardware at a control level, right? Meaning that we are centralizing the logic and intelligence of industrial process control in software, which could be hosted either on containers or in virtual machines that can run on any capable device, right? And if I can translate it into practical terms, I would say that, as I said, software-defined automation decouples hardware from software by virtualizing the orchestration between the physical processes, the control logic, and the hardware it runs on, right? Basically freeing industrial automation from the constraints of proprietary hardware. So now we are talking about avoiding vendor locking at a control layer. That's the huge paradigm shift or paradigm change that the software-defined automation concept brought in the 2010s and 2020s.
And what especially makes this, from your perspective, I mean, we selected those topics saying like 2025 was an important year. What made 2025 for you important, especially on this topic, when we say it's already there for a while, but we have good reasons saying 2025 really shaped the way. So maybe you can also give some idea on that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, in 2025, a couple of things happened, right? First of all, Hannover Messe, right? Hannover Messe, Siemens there, one of its huge announcements was software-defined automation and how they are implementing virtual PLCs at an Audi factory in Germany. Also the inception of new players or the consolidation of players, emerging startups, right? Like, for instance, software-defined automation, for instance, OTE, which are basically two German companies, even though now software-defined automation is headquartered in the US, but they were born in Germany. Also, the inception of industrial DevOps players. And even though industrial DevOps is kind of not exactly the same as software-defined automation, it's pretty much related, because it means bringing to the control layer, right, capabilities for instance, perform automated backups for hosting in Git, right? Git, like GitHub, for instance, the code, right, for PLC coding, right? And then you can manage the code very easily, and you can share that management across many different users. So there were that also was kind of a consolidation, not from a consolidation in terms of reducing number of players, but a consolidation in terms of technology for the industrial DevOps space in 2025 as well. Then also you have continuous development in some other traditional industrial automation players, like for instance Beckhoff or Phoenix Contact, right, with their virtual PLC solutions. Yeah. And also you have, for instance, companies like Schneider Electric or Emerson, right, who double down efforts on their software-defined automation approach. In case of Schneider Electric, we can talk about the EcoStruxure automation expert system, which basically the differentiator is that instead of relying on the traditional standard, which is IEC 61131, they are relying on a standard which is a 61499, which allows for portability and reusability of control logic, right? And if you look at what Emerson has done, Emerson is introducing the concept of boundless automation. I mean, boundless automations meaning we don't have this kind of rigid divisions between the different layers of the automation pyramid, but no bound, right? Boundless automation. So they are introducing software-defined automations offerings in their control portfolio, like the Delta V PK Flex controller, right? And also incorporating or including, serverless or virtualized servers, I would say, in their infrastructure, right? So different approaches, it's a general terminology, different approaches, but in 2025, a lot of announcements were made in that particular front, not just for the incumbents, but also for smaller emerging companies. So probably the big implication for the traditional automation vendors is that, with this SDA, software-defined automation initiatives, hardware is becoming a commodity, right? Mm-hmm. So exactly, yeah. It's a challenge for them in order to, review, redesign their business models, right? Because industrial automation vendors, traditionally, they heavily relied on hardware sales and, of course, services that are attached to the maintenance of those hardware sales, right? So nowadays, everything is shifting towards software, not just on the upper layers or the upper layers of the automation pyramid, but also in the lower layers. So it's a huge implication for them, right?
Exactly, and I mean, this is like what we discussed before with the data management topic, the huge implications on the vendor landscape, especially if you look from my regional perspective here in Germany. You have a lot of mid-sized industrial automation players, right? Like founded in the 80s, 90s, and so on. And for them, it's a huge transformation that's ahead of them, right? And we will see later anyway in the M&A part. For many of them, difficult to manage alone by themselves. And on the other side, I mean, the decoupling like we said before, really meaning there are new competitors entering the space with the required capabilities, right? So, so therefore, I think again, like we have a trend that is maybe not that much in the public, but is really driving and shaping a new setup in the vendor landscape. So
And let me tell you that there will be, for Hannover Messe this year in 2026, there will be huge announcements around that.
okay, so
I can tell you that.
now you made everybody curious.
We'll need to wait until the last week of April this year.
Yeah.
No,
Let's
yeah. Just to provide a little bit of clarification, because I was probably too technical, but why SDA also is software-defined automation, right? Why 2025 was a kind of a milestone year, of a landmark year, even though there are several growth drivers. Please, Tim, let me elaborate on three of them. And of course, I would like to know your opinion on this. And you can add other drivers if you think so, right? Of course. First of all, and this is something that doesn't affect only to the industrial automation vendors or the manufacturing landscape, but the whole workforce, right, worldwide, which is the labor and skills crisis, right? So,
Exactly.
couple of things here, right? First of all, you have a manufacturing workforce that is aging. Just in the U.S., I'm sorry for bringing here U.S. numbers, but I think it's a reflection of what is happening also in other regions out there. Just in the U.S., over 25% of workers in the manufacturing industry are 55 years old or older, right? And also there is another question more related to skills, right? Which is programming PLCs in ladder logics require increasingly skills like younger generations are not interested in acquire, because that's the truth, right? They don't see manufacturing as an attractive industry to work on. So, and this has a lot of implications, and we can have a separate episode on this regarding how digital technologies in the consumer industry affected our perception and our motivation to work in the manufacturing industry, right? And very important also that software-defined automation allows, manufacturers to use IT-like skills, right? More common programming language, like, Python, Java, also using containers instead of actual physical hardware, right? Making I would say these jobs more attractive, right, to a new generation of engineers. I would say that is a big driver, right? The labor crisis and skills gap. Then we have another huge driver, which is brownfield modernization, right? So, when I was at Honeywell, my old application and control engineers days, at least in Latin America, I could witness it firsthand, right? There are whether it is discrete manufacturing facilities or processing plants, there's a common issue, that is you have pretty new systems, but mostly the OT infrastructure is quite old. We are talking about systems that have 10, 20, 30, or even more years old, right? So why SDA is important here? Because these solutions can be non-invasive, right? Running in parallel with existing processes before going live. It's you have a risk reduction. These are all mission critical processes. Every second a plant stops, every second a factory line stops, that translates into thousands of dollars, into losing thousands of dollars. So with the software-defined automation approach, before going live with these new systems, you can have in parallel, right, not just the testing, but also the commissioning of these systems. And last but not least, sorry, I know I'm extending a little bit, but it's very important.
No problem.
From a business model standpoint, right, there's a shift from capital expenditure to operational expenditure, right? Manufacturers and end users are moving toward as a service models, right? And software-defined automation solutions, right, like virtual PLCs, allow companies to purchase standard low-cost hardware and pay a subscription fee based on the I/O capacity in use, right? It's something similar to how cloud computing works, right? So, of course, there are more drivers, but at least I wanted to highlight those three as high impact drivers, making this market, this landscape grow faster, right?
Yeah, absolutely, fully agree. And even though you said you used US numbers, but I can't tell you the exact figures, but I think in Germany and Europe you have the same topic, right? The aging workforce, you have the lack of talent following, coming into those jobs. So it's basically the pragmatic approach you have to take, right? Because somehow the plants have to work. So I would just add something saying, maybe even if you think about workforce, there are some technology enablers that even shifted further away from those skills, right? If you think about no code or low code, so facilitating, making that easier for a broader range of employees being able to program, put it that way, the SPLs. And I think it's necessary, right? Otherwise, as you said, you won't be able to staff that jobs in the future, right?
Absolutely, and the impact that the consumer technologies has on it is I don't know if we are able to measure it. You know, it changed completely our behavior, right? So I would say from a non-industrial, I would say, driver, the impact or the fact that the consumer technology is impacting every aspect of our lives also is impacting I would say, the manufacturing world in that way, right? Everything is moving to software, everything is moving to subscription, everything is you know, in particularly in manufacturing technology, hardware is being commoditized, everything is shifting towards applications, right? Cloud instead of on-prem, right? So that's a phenomenon that is happening, and the manufacturing world is not away from it, right?
Yeah. Okay, so I think that brings us also directly to the third trend we identified, and that might sound a little bit even contradictory to the other two, right? When we talk about decoupling of hardware and software, and looking now at the third trend that we identified, we said it's edge intelligence. Sounds strange, but it's a huge trend, right? Especially that we see there is a difference between enterprise technology and industrial technologies in terms of speed and latency. If you think about the data you acquire in those different fields, I think it's a logical trend that we see. Yeah, that we see exactly this trend moving specific analytical aspects from the cloud towards the edge. So, and I think if we look at the last couple of years, especially looking at topics like machine vision, inspection technology, quality inspection, predictive quality, it's not really new, but 2025 still, if I look at the exhibitions that I visited, was really a dominant topic, right? Because it's, I would say, the most mature application of digital intelligence, of also AI already established. So we are already also moving to the next big block. So that we thought, okay, 2025 is not in terms of technology innovation, but if we think about rollout of smart manufacturing concepts, we don't get around this topic, right? So what is your thinking about that?
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. And I would put industrial edge probably at the third, at the podium, right, of the hidden champions. Couple of things that probably we should say around this topic. First of all, what is edge, right? What do we mean by edge, right? A very brief definition, right? Today, I mean, traditionally we were talking about industrial edge computing. Now, given the inception of AI and the inference and analytical capabilities at the edge level, we are talking about more like edge intelligence rather than edge computing. I mean, software became also really prevalent, not just the hardware. So what's edge, basically, right? Edge or edge intelligence covers typically the hardware, the software, and also orchestration capabilities, which are deployed near or at the edge. That's why the name edge of the factory floor or the shop floor, right? Which being outside a centralized data center, right? To process data, run AI models, manage devices in real time. That's the key concept of edge. Now, if we think of an enterprise architecture, right? Of course, we have what it's called the OT world and the IT world, right? Operational technology, information technology. So at the enterprise layer, it's IT domain, right? So and typically today, every large enterprise has their own IT applications running on cloud, right? But what happens with OT? OT has different priorities, right? You have to prioritize availability rather than, of course, security is extremely important. But if there is anything that needs to be really prioritized, is the data availability, right? And the uptime of the different equipments in a production line or a factory floor. So in the OT world, traditionally, all the applications were installed on-prem, on centralized data centers, right? But not today, since a couple of years back, the huge from an architectural standpoint, the huge advancement in the factory floor was decentralizing those on-prem applications into as the definition said, the edge of the different pieces of equipment or assembly lines or production lines in a factory floor. So with that being said, edge is becoming extremely popular, right? To have AI inference capabilities, analytical capabilities, right? So you got insights, you got KPI calculations, almost on the fly at the shop floor, and you don't rely on cloud. You don't rely on cloud. There are, as you said, critical issues there like bandwidth, like latency, right? Like cybersecurity issues as well, right? That data privacy issues. So those are probably the main drivers why the industrial edge intelligence market is experiencing high growth rates, right? So and in terms of why in 2025 it became extremely popular, again, the inception of AI, right? Edge AI, right? You have edge AI inference, the proliferation of AI models for, as you said, right, machine vision, quality inspection. Also, don't forget predictive maintenance, which is driving demand not just for edge hardware with GPU capabilities. And here we think of NVIDIA, for instance, which is the disruptor in the space by far, right? NVIDIA is disrupting the space, the edge computing space, and almost every single industrial software vendor provider, industrial technology vendor provider has some sort of partnership with NVIDIA, right? Or is exploring partnerships with NVIDIA. Today, the chips, right, the GPUs that NVIDIA produces have become, something indispensable. It's something mandatory almost for this market, right, to keep growing and growing. So yeah, there are also other implications, basically, right? All the improvements in network infrastructure, the different protocols that are being developed within the shop floor, right? Of course, cybersecurity requirements, another huge driver for this market, right? So, but in a nutshell, that's why 2025 was kind of a landmark year, a milestone year also for edge AI. For edge intelligence and of course, edge AI as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at if you summarize that, and again, has a lot of implications on the single technologies in these areas, right? So if you look, for example, at topics like machine vision sensorics, right? Those technologies have been for years and decades in the market, but really experienced a new growth platform by integrating this intelligence, because it enabled new use cases like what was said, inline inspection and so on. And it's again for traditional players the need to transform their products, technologies, even thinking more towards solutions. And I think robotics is one topic that in the last year especially saw a huge trend on that, right? If you think about edge intelligence, there was kind of even, and we come within the M&A part on that. You saw also in that area some moves that manifested also this switch from fixed robotics, stationary robotics towards mobile autonomous robotics, right? So this is also part of the trend that's enabling that, and that's a huge growth market, also transforming the robotics industry. And so again, like I think very big implications on the landscape of vendors. So all the technologies basically transforming manufacturing have the need to transform themselves, right?
Absolutely. And robotics is experiencing that today with the physical AI, right? Topic that we will discuss for sure
Exactly,
on part 2 of this series, right? Just if I may, Tim, 2 very important things. Again, industrial AI for industrial data management and industrial edge intelligence was the main driver, but there are 2 clear reasons why this market will continue grow, right? Today, as per our numbers, as per our estimations, the edge intelligence market, industrial edge intelligence market is valued at around $20 billion. Right, with and it's projected to grow up to $45 billion in 2030, right? 2032. Sorry. So there are 2 main reasons also that explains this growth, right? First of all, industrial AI will not scale without edge, and what I mean by this, the cloud, of course, could be essential for model training, let's say, large-scale analytics, enterprise-level analytics. Enterprise integration as well with enterprise systems, right? But inference, real-time decision-making, control loop AI-driven control loop must run at the edge, right? And on the other hand, agentic AI, which is a tremendous topic that we will discuss in the next episode, must live near the production line, near the assembly line, near the machines, right? Because the future of agentic AI manufacturing is at the edge. It's not at cloud data centers, right? As you said, autonomous robots, going through, the warehouses, vision system inspecting parts in real time, AI agents managing shift scheduling at plant level, for instance. And edge is where agentic AI meets the physical world, right? Yeah, so those are 2 other powerful reasons why we are predicting continuous growth of this market towards the next 5 to 7 to 10 years, right?
Yeah. So what else to say? I think there is clear reasons, I think, why we've chosen these 3 trends, right? As we said, besides maybe the robotics topic, the other topics a little bit below the visibility or putting a little bit in the background of industrial AI. But I think clear foundations, right, needed to be able to scale everything we discuss around AI. So I think for good reasons, hidden champions in 2025. And the second is, I think, really the impact on the vendor landscape. I think that can't be emphasized enough. If you look at the vendor landscape, there is a huge need for transformation of traditional vendors, coping with the value migration towards software and digital skills. So it's really the 2 sides of it, right? So the one thing is the enablement, put it that way, to build new business models, to implement digital technologies. And on the other side, especially for the fragmented and mid-sized vendor landscape, really to cope with that, right?
Yeah. So, and don't forget about partnership ecosystems, which is a massive topic that is going on today from a business strategy standpoint, right? Today, the era of one vendor, kind of one size fits all, or one vendor trying to or addressing every aspect of the manufacturing, process or the automation pyramid, those days are gone. Today, partnerships and a technology ecosystem, collaborative technology ecosystem is paramount, right? So, and particularly for small, medium industrial vendors, right? So what should they do? They should invest in new capabilities. They should partner, right? Probably they don't have the buy capabilities, right?
Sure, yeah.
So partner with a technology provider in order to get complementary capabilities is also a really good strategy that they can consider, right?
Exactly. Sebastian, I think we already laid a good foundation for the next part we are going to address. And I think that's the one everybody would expect talking about 2025. It's industrial AI. And yeah, basically we will cover that in our second part of the Industrial Tech Quarterly. Sebastian, looking forward to continue the discussion with you.
Looking forward to continue the discussion, Tim. It was a great pleasure being here after almost 1 year. So let's continue the discussion.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Transforming industries.